Hi everyone, welcome back. This is the day 3 lecture and we have more information we need to discuss about the variables. Let's do a short review. So in last lecture, the lecture 2, we talked about the number systems, the binary numbers. Well, and for different number system, we talk about the binary 2-base number, and then we talk about the octal number, and then the hexadecimal, and of course our 10-base number, and that is the number system we know the best, right? And especially we pay a little bit more attention to binary, and you need to know how to convert a binary to a decimal, and you also need to know how to convert a decimal to a binary. Well, you would argue you don't really need to use that a lot, even though we understand our computers are running on binary numbers. We don't really touch the binary numbers by ourselves, and you are definitely correct on this. But think about that. You're a computer science person, and you have taken a computer science course. And if you don't know how does binary number system work, it's kind of embarrassing, right? So anyhow, I'm requiring you to know how to convert the binary to decimal and decimal to binary, and you are likely to see this kind of question in the midterm, okay? Well, talking about the midterm, well, let me give you a little more information about the midterm. So if you take a look on the syllabus, you will see the date of the midterms. And for each midterm, I'm going to release the exam paper on Canvas on 8 a.m. and the finished exam as a PDF or as a bunch of the .py files will due on 8 p.m. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. you will have a total of 12 hours. Is that sounding a bit scary? Well, no worries. Well, I'm gonna make sure that the exam won't be super long. The exam will only take you roughly 100 minutes, okay? So from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., you only need to figure out roughly a 100 minutes, or at most 2 hours, and you should be able to finish the exam, okay? And well, I don't want to add a take-home exam, give you 12 hours and totally destroy your day. The exam won't be super long, okay? It will be a reasonable size of a in-class exam, okay? And let's also talk about the final exam. And the final exam will be on the date specified in the syllabus too. And that day, I'm not gonna be able to change the date for the final exam. So you really need to mark the calendar, and for the final exam, you will have a total of 24 hours. That is really a whole day. Well, and again, don't worry, I'm not gonna give you a book of questions to do. Well, there will be 10, well, I planned to give you 10 coding questions, okay? Final exam will be coding questions only. Okay, and let's come back to review, and we also talk about the variables and the keyboard input. Well, and for the keyboard input, remember we need to do a input, parentheses, and then quote with a prompt. Well, the prompt is kind of important because when you run your program, and your program will stop right there, show the prompt, and then wait for the user to type something. And if you just stop there and you didn't give a prompt, and it looks like the program just freeze there, so it's weird. So usually I recommend you guys to give a prompt. And today we are going to move on and discuss the white spaces and how the white spaces work in Python, and I'm going to show you how you can comment your code. And actually you have already seen the comments in our data exercises, and we will see the naming conventions in Python and a little more tricks about the variables and the operators. This is the part we have already seen. This is about the variables. So if we define a variable a to be 3, and later we update the a's value to be 5, and on the first step, you need to know we create a variable name. The variable name is a, and Python will maintain a list of the variable names Python has already known. And for each of the variable name, it will refer to the right side. So on the right side, you will see there is an object 3. So the name refers to an object, and that object will hold the value for that variable name A. Okay, and later if we create a new variable, we update the value of the A from 3 to 5, and well, here is the thing you want to remember. Python is not gonna erase this 3 and then put a 5 at the same place. Okay? So Python is not erasing the 3. Instead, Python will create a new variable, a new value 5, and then update the reference. Now A refers to 5. And after that, there is a garbage collection, right? So this 3 will be considered as a garbage, and then Python will delete that and free up the memory space eventually. Well, you can't really expect that the next second 3 will be deleted. But if your program runs for a long time, and eventually the garbage collection built inside Python will get rid of the garbage to free up some of the memory space. Okay, here is a very short exercise. If we have a day equals Thursday, so the variable name is day, and then the original value is a string Thursday. And after that, we update the day's value to 32.5, and then we update again to 19. And after that, we want to print day. What are we going to get? So A, nothing is printed, we got an arrow, and B, Thursday, C, 32.5, and D, 19. Think about that. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. If you say the answer is D, 19, and then you are correct. And the reason is, remember, we are using the same variable name day, and then we are just updating the value. So eventually we will go through this kind of process. We started the day to be Thursday, and then we do a update, and then the second value of the day will be 32.5, and then we update that again. So eventually the day variable name refers to a object, and that object will be 19. So when we print day, and then Python will grab the variable name day and then follow the reference, and Python will find the value 19. So eventually 19 will be printed. Okay, and then here is a little bit more about the basic data types, and we know we have integers, we have float numbers, and they are the some of the basic data types supported in Python. Well, and z equals 5 plus 2, and then, well, 5 plus 2, Python will evaluate the value of the 5 plus 2 first, and then Python will figure out it is 7, and then 7 will be assigned to the value z. Okay, and similarly, if we want to ask Python to do another calculation for us, which is 5 divided by 2, and then remember, when Python is doing the division, Python will give you a float number. Even though it is integer divided by another integer, you will get a float number. So in this case, you are going to get 2.5. And then we also talk about float numbers. And the next thing, well, whitespace. So in Python, whitespace is meaningful, and we use white spaces to indent our code. Well, you may say, we haven't really seen any code indentation yet, right? Well, you are correct. And later, when we move on to other topics like conditions or iterations or some other object-oriented programming, and then you have to indent your code a lot. Well, but for now, we haven't seen a lot yet, and later in this course, I guarantee you're going to use indentation a lot. So for now, what you need to know is indentation or white spaces can be meaningful in Python. So if you start a line, you start a new line with a few white spaces at the very beginning of the line. Python usually will get confused because Python will consider that as an indentation. An indentation could mean, for example, a new code block. So usually when you start a line, and then you shouldn't put put white spaces at the very beginning for now until later when we enter the condition or the iterations. Okay, and here is another thing I want to show you. So even though we say we don't want to have the white spaces at the very beginning, however, here is a trick built in Python. If your line is super long and you have to break your line into several lines, add a backslash at the very end of the line, and then you start from the next. So backslash, and then you start from the next line, and then at this point you have the indentation, but this indentation is okay because you are using the backslashes to tell Python, even though it is a line break. However, you have reminded Python those 3 lines should be treated as 1 line. And what you are doing is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. Okay, so this trick can be useful when you have a super long line of code and you really have to break it up to 2 or more lines to make it readable. So this is kind of a special case that we can add white spaces to the very beginning of the code, but usually we don't do that a lot. Okay, so I guess this video is already long enough and I will continue in the next video.